So welcome. My name's Lucy, and I'm going to give you a little bit more of an introduction in a few minutes. But we're here now to talk about neurodiversity and parent care reforms. A few months ago, Sarah got in touch and said, could you do a session about neurodiversity in parent care reforms? And I went, go on then, let's do it. And so we're going to take you through a little bit of an introduction to neurodiversity, because I never, ever assume that everybody knows stuff. And so I'm going to take people from a bit of a ground point, although I recognize and totally understand that many of you will have a very deep understanding of neurodivergence and neurodiversity. But I take it from a bit of a base level, and then we're going to take a bit of a journey, and I'll talk through the agenda in a moment. Before I go too much further, I use QR codes quite a bit in this session. So with a QR code, you can point, and if you've got a camera on your phone or a QR reader, you should be able to point at a QR code, press it, and it will take you somewhere. They are not essential, all right? Being able to use the QR code and go and find some information is not essential. They are additional, they are extra, all right? So don't feel you have to go and click on everything, because that becomes really distracting sometimes. But a quick introduction to me, and again, I use my QR code just to show you, you can go to a business card page. It's a little web page, and it's got all the things you can get for free from me, or how to get in touch with me. I'm Lucy Smith. I'm a parent. I'm a consultant, and I work with Contact as an associate. I'm a change management expert. And more importantly for this session, I've banished imposter syndrome. Don't know if anybody else has got imposter syndrome, but I banished it, and I call myself a neurodiversity expert. I've been working in the area of neurodiversity since, I'd probably say since about 2017. And I've been running my business, which is Inclusive Change, since 2020. And a little bit about inclusive change in a moment, I think. We talk about building the future of work with neurodiversity in mind. So I think about the workplace, I think about supporting adults, I think about, and I talk about how we build the next generation of the workforce to come into the workforce well prepared, particularly if they are neurodivergent. That's enough about me, all right? You can find out about me online. You can find me on LinkedIn, Lucy Smith, find me. There's lots out there. Before we go too much further, I'm just going to set a few ground rules, all right? It's my bit of contracting, okay? Neurodiversity is a big topic. I can't cover everything in an introductory session. I'm going to cover a broad range of experiences and identities, but in this session, I will specifically and mostly be focusing on ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and a little bit about dyspraxia, but not a great deal. Mostly, I will probably relate to ADHD and autism and maybe dyslexia. But we will talk about the bigger piece in a moment, okay? This is a space where I would love everyone to feel safe and respected when exploring these topics. That means if you want to put something in the chat, if you want to ask a question, please do. These spaces are where we learn, okay? This is where we can make mistakes. And we can say things and go, oh, now I get it. Thanks for that clarification. I also think that I don't get everything right all of the time. So I'm really, really open to questions being asked, for your thoughts to be shared, and seeking clarification around the language that I use. I tend to use identity first language, but I recognize that different people have different ways of talking about neurodivergence and their own neurodivergence. So I slip into person first and identity first as I go through, and I'll explain that a little bit later as well. Just for the housekeeping now, what to expect. This session is for 2 hours, now 1 hour 50 minutes, because I do a lot of talking before I start. I have a break planned. There is a slide that says time for a break. If we get to a point and we haven't got to that slide yet, I will probably bring that break in and go, right, let's go for a break now. That break will be about 5 to 8 minutes, okay? And what I do in the break is turn my camera off, turn my voice off. You all go and do what you need to do. And then I come back and I will just start. I don't wait for everybody to come back. I will just start when I come back. Okay. Feel free to fidget, to eat, to drink, to move around, to doodle or stim. I've got mine. So I've got my little cassette tape here. And I've got a little brush that I use to just stim with at different points. It's okay to be quiet. All right. Generally, I ask people to stay muted unless you want to ask a question, raise your hand. That will be really helpful. I do use online interactions. We're going to use chat, and we're also going to use something called Slido, which I'll introduce you to in a moment, which will allow us to engage and be able to input, particularly if we don't like to talk on camera. Cameras on or off, entirely up to you, but please stay muted. We'll use the chat function and Slido. Okay, I'm just going to check the chat. So yes, yep, quick one here. If you don't want to be on the recording, turn your camera off, okay? Because otherwise you may very well be on the recording unless we can edit you out, which is a hell of a faff. And we have to pay people to do stuff like that usually. Right, okay. I mentioned Slido. So we're still getting started. If you're ADHD, you're probably at a point where you're thinking, for goodness sake, woman, please just move on. I use some interaction called slido.com. It is not essential. You do not have to join this if you don't want to. You can join in via the chat, and we will have a breakout session during this. But if you want to, you can go to slido.com and use hashtag 8033411 or point at that QR code and it will take you to Slido. But if tech ain't your thing, don't bother, all right? Just don't worry. But I do ask some questions, which takes us to the point of using Slido to interact and bring some stuff on the screen. It just looks good, all right? 2 thank yous before I go too much further, okay? I want to say a big thank you to Bath and North East Somerset Parent Carer Forum. Baines, Rachel, Roxy and Tonya. They're going to be featured in this session because I've had an interview with them and I've taken out snippets of their interview so that we can listen and engage and talk about what they say as neurodivergent people leading and being part of a forum, but also what they say about how we support members, how we support our staff, and how we interact with our stakeholders, local authorities, etc. We're going to cover that kind of stuff. So I want to say a big thank you to Rachel, Roxy, and Tonya, and cover your ears if you don't want to hear your voices, all right, when it comes up. Also want to say a big thank you to Raja from Epic Luton Parent Carer Forum. Also did a great interview with us, and you'll get to see and hear Raja during this session where I bring in some of his experiences of being a neurodivergent adult, an autistic adult, who talks about some of the things that he finds a struggle, but also many of the things that he has strengths in as we go through. Whew! Can you believe we're at the agenda? All right. Okay. Any questions on anything, pop it in the chat as we go through. I'll pick them up because I like a red dot and it tells me to go and find it. We're going to have an introduction to neurodiversity, and there will be a bit of interaction in this, okay? I'm then going to be talking about a strengths-based approach to neurodivergence and neurodiversity within your forums. We're going to look at some common barriers and some of those things that can be a challenge, because it's great to think about strengths. And yes, we must. And I love a strengths-based approach. However, let's not sugarcoat this. Let's not say, yes, but we can do everything. Actually, there are some barriers to being a neurodivergent adult within a community. We're also going to talk about the law. So we're going to talk about the Equality Act, a little bit about health and safety, but we'll mostly focus on the Equality Act. We'll talk about reasonable adjustments. We'll talk about what we have to do as employers or as organisations to be inclusive and stick within the law and stay safe. And we'll have some tips and strategies. I can't believe we're going to get all that done within all this time, but we will, okay? We will, trust me. Any questions? Pop it in the chat. You know I'm going to pick that up as we go along, okay? So my first question to everybody. Now, you can pop the answer in the chat, or you can try using Slido. It's entirely up to you. If you use Slido, it's going to come up on the screen and it all looks quite exciting when it happens. What do you want to get out of this session today? Let's take a couple of minutes for me to hear and see and read what you'd like to get out of the session today. You can pop in the chat, and it's the most easiest way of me doing this because with so many of us on the screen, I think we've got 45 joined us. I can't ask everybody to say, oh, what do you want? What do you want? Because we'll be here for 45 minutes. I know we will. But I can see people already typing in Slido, and I've already got information I may not know. I love that because quite frankly, that could be anything. I don't know what you don't know yet. I love it. But great. To expand your knowledge, brilliant. Thank you. Support with understanding and managing misunderstandings and masking. Oh my goodness, yes. I think we will talk about masking actually. We'll have that in there. And so I can tell when things are going to start coming in because it all comes up on my screen and pings up quite quickly. Information to take back to the rest of the Parent Carer Forum. We're going to have a link to this video and we will have a website that we will share with you where you're going to get a load of information after this because we can't cover everything in one session. All right. To better support our volunteers in the work we do. Love it. To learn more and get support for my own neurodiversity. Oh my goodness. At the end of this session, if you need to get in touch with me about anything personal or if there's anything you want some specific advice on, things like access to work, things like advocacy, get in touch. All right, we can help with that stuff. Slido tends to help. Okay, it tends to move things around and it goes, okay, I want this now. Lots of reps with neurodivergence and I want to know best how to support them. Yes, it's why we're here, Sarah. It's why we're here. That's why you asked it. Information, advice and validation. Hopefully I'll give you validation. Hopefully we'll get some of that. I'm just going to check in the chat as well. I've had lots of training and supporting and working with neurodiverse and neurodivergent children. Want to expand my knowledge of working with colleagues and our members. Brilliant. And I think there is nuance and difference in working with adults versus knowing what you're doing with children. And quite a lot of the time, that might come through advocacy. That might come through not taking away autonomy from adults who you're working with. There's a heck of a lot that we'll talk about and that we'll cover in this session. What have we got? I myself, ADHD, brilliant. We're going to cover acronyms and things a bit later. ADHD is autistic and ADHD, diagnosed 18 months ago, age 51. Woohoo! Love it. Thank you. Brilliant to share that. I would have, and I would love to know how I can potentially manage in the workplace. Brilliant. Hopefully we'll have some of that stuff. But remember, it's a starter session. All right. I can't do everything in an hour and 3/4, but I'm blooming well going to try as much as I can. Me too, also last year at 45. Woohoo! Me too, 4 years ago. So there's loads of people that are saying and sharing that they have had a diagnosis fairly recently. That's going to be part of the thing we'll explore as we go through. Others finding ways to work in an office full of differing neurodivergences and how to work around everyone's needs. Welcome to my world. Welcome to Inclusive Change Office. Everybody's neurodivergent and we have to work out how to work with each other sometimes. Inner monologue, outer monologue, inside voice, sensory stuff, being overwhelmed. There's a heck of a lot of stuff. And same for us too. So there's a whole load of stuff there coming through the chat. Brilliant ones on here. Let's see, preventing conflict. It's changed now. It's got little words. Let's see, help to be a better forum with understanding and managing neurodivergent staff. So much stuff in there. So when I finish this session, I'll download all this stuff and we'll be able to put it up on the website that I'm going to give you later on. All right. I hope you can get a sense of the style and the kind of format that we're going to go through. In the next piece or the next session module, let's call it a module. All right. I'm going to give you an introduction to neurodiversity. Right at the beginning, I said I don't assume that everybody knows stuff. And anytime I go and do what I call a start the conversation session, which is we're starting conversations. I always start with an introduction to neurodiversity. So for those of you that know a lot more, bear with us, all right? Bear with us because I'm going to try and make it interesting. I'll try and hopefully bring some new stuff in there for you, okay? Neurodiversity, that word neurodiversity, describes the infinite variety of human neurocognition. Whew. I've been to university, can you tell? Big fancy sentence. Simply put, biologically, everyone's brain works slightly differently. And when we're talking about neurodiversity, we're talking about human beings. We're talking about a subset, for instance, of biodiversity. As a group on this call, we are a neurodiverse group. We all have different ways in which our brains work, but some of us will have brains that work in a very different way. And we might have a condition or a difference. And that might mean we're neurodivergent. We don't fit the norms. If you were to think of a bell curve, okay, so a curve, and inside the middle of that bell curve, you've got everybody that doesn't identify as neurodivergent. So everybody in that bell curve is neurotypical. But you might have people who sit right at the edge of that bell curve. They might not have a diagnosis, but they might have traits and they might have things that kind of align them to being different and thinking in a different way. You're also outside of that bell curve, you're going to have lots of people in outliers where their brains work very different to a typical brain. Whether there is a typical brain anymore, I'm very much doubtful of that. And notice, I try not to use the word normal, okay? Because I don't think there is a normal anyway. And hands up or just share in the chat if you can agree with what is normal anyway. My normal is a neurodivergent family. One of the things I didn't say right at the beginning is I'm a parent to two neurodivergent teenagers. They're autistic. I found out when they were 11. I thought my family was the normal family. I thought I was the one that wasn't different. Turns out my whole family is different. All of my extended family, even my mum, all different. And so recognizing that that was my normal, that is my normal, is different for everyone. Exactly. So, yeah, we're all totally normal in my house. Normal subjective, everyone's normal will be different. I grew up with my uncle, living with my uncle and supporting him. I say supporting him, living with him as a brother, like a brother, and he's Down syndrome. And that was normal to me to grow up with somebody in my family who had learning difficulties, who was Down syndrome. Completely normal. And I never understood how other people didn't have that in their life and reacted in a very different way to him when they met him, because it's like, well, that's just Nikki. That's just our family. Have you never met somebody like this? And they hadn't. Anyway, back to neurodiversity. Okay. So on this screen, you can see some differences, okay? This has come from the fabulous Nancy Doyle, Dr. Nancy Doyle, from Genius Within. It's based on the work from Mary Colley. And I also have a couple of other references on there that might help with understanding definitions, because I don't go through lots of definitions now. Some of the neurodivergence we talk about are things like dyslexia. Many people have heard about dyslexia. Doesn't mean you can't read. Might mean, though, that you have a slower processing speed. Might mean, though, that your working memory might not work as quickly as other people's. But you might have really great strengths in 3D skills or visual and creative thinking. When I work with lots of industries, creative industries are one where I see lots of dyslexia and lots of ADHD. ADHD is my next one on there. So ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity. Sorry, I'm going to say the word disorder because it comes up in the medical terms. All right. I don't like it, but it comes up there. Tourette syndrome is another neurodivergence that we might talk about through this session. Acquired neurodiversity. I'd love to hear, and you can share in the chat if anybody's heard of acquired neurodiversity. All right. It's not something that everybody has heard of, but Generally, if you're ADHD or you have dyslexia, autism, you might find that you were born with that. So genetically, you have this condition and this difference. But many people might acquire a neurodivergence throughout their life because of an accident, because of a medical procedure. And I've worked with people who've had traumatic brain injuries, people who've had an operation and they've had a loss of oxygen to the brain and their brain has changed. They weren't neurodivergent before that. They are now. I've worked with a lady called Emma Mallet, who is an incredible neurodiversity advocate, who had an accident when a concrete truck ran into her car when she was 18 years old. And ever since then, she had a traumatic brain injury, she had massive changes, and now she's diagnosed with ADHD. But she knows a time before she was 18 when she never had that experience before. So neurodiversity or neurodivergence isn't just something that you have from when you were born. You might change and actually things might happen in your life to mean that your brain works in a different way. Yep, traumatic brain injury can present as similar to attention difficulties. Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's our brain changes. Menopause. Yes, just saying. We have a whole session that I've recorded it previously about menopause and neurodivergence. Don't even get me started because I could be here for 3 hours on that and you'll never get through these slides. Mental health. Mental health differences can mean that we work and operate in a different way. And I have another slide that I haven't put in this deck today, actually, because of time, where I cover a whole load of mental health differences around things like bipolar, narcissism or narcissistic personality difference, dissociative personality difference. All of these things make us work differently. Yeah. ASC on here is autism spectrum. All right. So autism, Asperger's, whichever way you say it. I'll talk about language in a moment. All right. Because I mentioned right at the top, language is very personal, but it also evolves. I try not to use the disorder language, but I know in medical language and in your EHCPs, your educational health and care plans, you are going to see that as language. All right, it's going to happen. And the last two on there, dyspraxia, developmental coordination, delay or difference. And then the last one, dyscalculia. Sometimes when I go and work with people, depending on their level of experience, not a lot of people have heard of dyscalculia. However, more and more recently, I'm finding people are going, yes, I know what that means because I've got it. Dyslexia with maths. So all of those people that have been forced to resit their GCSE maths, all of those people that are doing functional skills, or you'd like to go back and do an apprenticeship and you've been told you can't because maths really doesn't work for you. It is a real and challenging thing. And I know PhD researchers who have dyscalculia and explain, and I don't talk much about this after this, but they explain dyscalculia by saying, if I was to ask them to read a bank statement, it's like them asking me, what can you see out of your elbow? They literally cannot see and process numbers and mathematical signs. So they've actually, this particular person has created a program that they convert all their bank statements into written words. So FOURPLUS ONE. I couldn't even spell one then, couldn't process it. So they've translated it to make that work for them. So that's a quick start around some different neurodivergence. I have a slide. We won't spend too much time on this one, all right? But I'd love if you want to check in the chat, anybody that you can recognize from this slide. Who do you know? And of course, what do you think they all have in common? Now, I do this in another way with other presentations when I've got more time to spend on this kind of stuff. And particularly when I'm working with people who haven't yet explored neurodivergence. And I have different sets of slides, so I group people into different areas. But is there anybody on here that you recognize and anybody that you recognize and what their neurodivergence might be. So I'm seeing some. FASD, if I'm correct, and the acronym means fetal alcohol syndrome, may be acquired, but may also be it's from birth. So it's not something that you will have developed throughout your life. It's not because of a thing that's happened to you. It has happened in utero generally, if I'm right about that. All right. Just to say, but yes, those kind of things, I think of them as neurodivergence. Labels are labels, and labels are really important, particularly in helping us get support sometimes. But as we go through this session, you'll see that actually it's just as important to understand what your needs are as an individual, as a human being, so that we can support you in the right way, and not just go, oh, well, you're autistic, so you need noise cancelling headphones and a quiet room, because that might not work for everybody. So, right, who have we got? We have got Chris Packham, which is, he's autistic, absolutely. We have got the creator of Pokemon, Satoshi Tajiri. I think I've got it right round the right way round. The creator of Pokemon. He is autistic. Jamie Oliver's dyslexic. I think he might also be talking about ADHD now as well. Simone Biles, ADHD. Cat Burns. Have I got Cat Burns in there? Possibly not. I think we've got Lily Allen, ADHD. We've got, who else have we got? I don't think I have got Cat Burns in there, but she is autistic and sings about it. So that's brilliant. We have got, I'm going to go from the top, all right, with the lady starting in the blonde hair. We've got Holly Smale, author, autistic. Yes, I will. We've got Lily Allen, ADHD. Will I Am, ADHD. Greta Gerwig, I think I've got the right name. The writer and, sorry, director, I think, of the Barbie movie, ADHD. We've got Simone Biles, we've got Satoshi Tajiri, and I'm going to go back again to Jamie Oliver with the tomatoes in front of him. Jamie Oliver, dyslexia. We have got, let me just move my thing out of the way. Chris Packham, autism. Anne Hegarty from The Chase, autistic. Shapi Kosandi, who is ADHD. And if you want to read a book and understand the female perspective of undiagnosed ADHD, read her book, Scatterbrain. It is absolutely fantastic. Absolutely. It's one of the books that is my top book from this year. Lucy Bronze, ADHD and autistic. We have got Michael Phelps, ADHD. We have got, I never get it right, Ajaya Ado. Sorry, because I get mixed up with that one, with her name. She's dyspraxic. I think it's Daisy Mae Cooper, ADHD. Keira Knightley is dyslexic. Richard Branson. Shaparak Korsandi. I'll put it in the chat for you in a moment. All right, Shapi Korsandi. Richard Branson, dyslexic, but probably also ADHD. And if you ask me, maybe autism, but I'm not there to diagnose him. Okay. And Daniel Radcliffe, dyspraxic. So all of them have neurodivergence in common. All of them have been open about this. I'm just going to write Shaparak, KHLSAND. I think I've spelled it right. Probably not. And it's Scatterbrain. Brain is her book. All right. I got it on audiobook because I can't, at the moment, I can't read. I can audiobook everything, but I find it hard to read stuff. Whoosh, that was a whistle stop in a bit of an introduction, all right, to what it is and the people you might recognize. Brilliant. Susan, thank you for that tip around FASD, Greater Manchester. Please do reach out to Susan for support on that. I know I'm not the expert on everything, and so I start with an overview of a lot of things. Okay, so in this session, we're going to talk about some stats. We're going to talk about the reason why we have to talk about this stuff. And if you want to make a case to anybody else, using stats and data is really helpful. But I come from a workplace perspective. And so two of the documents that I tend to refer to are the City and Guilds Neurodiversity Index Report 2025, and the Birkbeck University and Neurodiversity in Business Report from the 2024 one is out. I don't think 2025 is out yet, but I will double check that one. Actually, I think it might be. I'll tell a lie. I've got an old picture. But there we go. Both of these give great perspectives from workers, colleagues, and adults in the workplace. All right. My dog is now starting to annoy me because she wants to come into the room. She's not going to. We're going to stop that. Let's calm. And I'm going to ignore her. Language. Right. What do you know? Oh, by the way, the dog can open the door. Just saying. I'm just going to shut the door. Bear with me for a moment. Oh, my word. You get to see I'm wearing jeans on a professional session. My word. Okay. I didn't think the dog could do that. There we go. You know, when you get interrupted by something and you can't get your train of thought back, and you know I'm on a roll and now I've got to get that roll back. How many of you can feel my pain right now where you've just been interrupted and you don't quite know what's going to happen next? So one of the other things I didn't say at the top of this session is I didn't tell you about anything that I may identify as. I don't have any diagnosis. But I have a very busy brain and I've been through menopause. So I'm postmenopausal. Got that by text message. Just saying. Don't have a chip on my shoulder about it. Yes, I do. And my brain is very busy. You can probably tell by the way I can talk, the way that I explain things. There may be some kind of ADHD going on there. Just saying. But I recognize it. I know it. I work with it. And I've always been like this. And I'm much more comfortable in my skin now than I used to be. Right. Let's get back on the track. Okay, neurodivergent. So some language you might see. Neurodivergent could describe somebody who is different or identifies with a condition or a different way of thinking. And you might find language like ADHDer. This is your identity first language. I'm an ADHDer. Another person might prefer to say, I'm a person or a woman or a man or non-binary with ADHD. Okay, so there are different ways that you might want to talk about yourself. Autistic. So you might find that somebody says, I'm an autistic person, but they may also, other people might identify saying, I am a person with autism. I prefer to say, and my children, I'm an autistic person. It's part and parcel of who my family are and who they are, and they prefer to say that, and I tend to use that. But I will also ask people, what do you prefer? How would you prefer me to describe you? Or how would you prefer me to refer to you? That's perfectly fine. And many, many people want to be identified as an individual first. However, language changes and evolves, as I said. And here is one, which is a controversial one, neurospicy. I didn't like the phrase neurospicy when I first heard it. I felt that, and I still do feel a little bit actually, that it devalues. And actually there are connotations of the word neurospicy which are not pleasant, and it actually has connotations of not being very inclusive and an insult. However, some people, I'll come back to that comment in a minute, some people would describe themselves as neurospicy. And some people find that helpful because they don't have a diagnosis or they wouldn't be looking for a diagnosis. But they might say, oh, I'm neurospicy. My brain's a little bit different, but I haven't got the certificate, I haven't got the badge, so I'm not going to say it outright. Yeah. So it can be something that can allow individuals to feel comfortable about talking about their difference and their needs without saying I'm autistic, without saying I'm ADHD, without saying I'm dyslexic. But please do be aware that there are connotations of that language that may not sit well with everybody. We mentioned ADHD earlier, so autistic and ADHD. Also, the gold standard, or being the symbol for gold. I think, I'm not a scientist, I could get that wrong, but I'm pretty sure it is. So let's just see. Sally, you mentioned, I refer to myself as autistic with a side salad of ADHD. Love it. I identify more strongly with my autism, but the ADHD is definitely there too. Laura, I'd be the other way around. Georgina, my daughter's autistic, has Down syndrome and is partially sighted. Really interesting that, because there are so much overlap and co-occurrence. Medically, they might use the term comorbidity. I don't like that. I would prefer to say co-occurrence and multiple identities. And actually, even though grammatically you might use the word, and I'm going to bring all these up now actually, you might use the word neurodiverse to describe a group of people. Actually, an individual may call themselves neurodiverse because you have multiple neurodivergent conditions, multiple differences that make you up, and you go, I'm neurodiverse because basically there is a side salad going on in my head. Yeah. Other words on there: neurodivergence, neurotypical. If you need to describe not being neurodivergent, you could use neurotypical. But again, and I even had this chat in my office today when somebody said, oh, well, somebody does that because they're neurotypical. I said, no, they don't. They do it because they're an individual who feels that's their values, and that's how they've been brought up, and they've got a whole load of experiences, not because they're neurotypical. It's because who they are. And we can't just put down stereotypes just because somebody's autistic, somebody's ADHD, somebody's neurotypical. That doesn't make sense to me. So lecture over on that one. All right. And the last one on there, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, dyslexia, those kind of disses all fall into that language. Boy, there was a lot there, wasn't there? Okay. Going to give you some statistics. All right. Around 20% of the population is neurodivergent, according to statistics. I'm going to tell you right now that statistics can be manipulated to make anything I want them to say, right? However, I'd also say that I'm going to hazard a guess that it's more than 20% of the population. And one of the numbers on this page, sorry if you dyscalculate, but I will be reading them out for you. 53% of Generation Z, Gen Z, identify as neurodivergent. In a Deloitte study, so a report that Deloitte carried out, they talked to thousands of young people in the United States and I think parts of Europe as well. 53% of the respondents in that study who were Gen Z identified as neurodivergent. What does that tell you? And I've got a question coming up for you in a moment. 80% of neurodivergent employees don't disclose their neurodivergence at work due to stigma. Now this, I'd like to think, is a safe space where a number of people have jumped online and said, this is me, this is who I am, this is how I refer to myself, neurosparkly, yeah, flaming hot, chilies, spicy brain, all of those kind of things. But in general workplaces, I find that many people do not disclose because of stigma, because of what happens next, because they've seen other people and the way that they've been treated, and they don't want that. Plus, also, there's a whole load of other reasons that they don't know how to disclose. Yeah, let me stop on there, all right? Because that's a whole other session, okay? You know, I'm going to go off in tangents if I need to. 30 to 40% of neurodivergent employees struggle with retention due to lack of support. This comes from the City and Guilds Neurodiversity Index report that I mentioned earlier. 30 to 40% of neurodivergent employees struggle to stay in a job because of lack of support. Ta-da! Why are we here today? 549,000 people are on a waiting list in the NHS for an ADHD assessment. And I think it's around about 250,000 on a waiting list for autism assessment right now. Well, say right now, as of March 2025, that statistic came from. So I did that research earlier this weekend. So here's my question to you. So what? What does that mean? Why do we even have to think about this? With those statistics, with that information we've been talking about, with the stuff we've put in the chat, is that how? So what? What does this mean for business? What does this mean for the future workplace? What does this mean for your communities? What does this mean for your parent carer forum? That's a heck of a lot of questions I've just thrown at you, and I'm going to put the Slido up so you can answer in Slido. You can point at that QR code. you can use the hashtag number, and I'll look at chat as well. So whilst you're there, I'm going to look at the chat. Not a chat. Oh, so not a chance would I disclose again, and that's as a teacher disgraceful. Exactly. So that's where I'm getting to that. It's not okay, but it is the space that we are. It is where we are. Disclosure, my son asked me if he should put it on his new employee form in the disability section. We discussed it and he did not put it down. But, oh, sorry, he did put it down. Sorry, read that wrong. He did put it down, but he works in IT. Ta-da! And a lot of his team are neurodivergent. I do a lot of work with cyber, with tech companies. And yes, when I do these sessions, the chat is full. And literally, neurotypical or non-neurodivergent people are in a minority in some of the sessions that I deliver. Many may have reps. Yes, exactly. You might have reps that haven't yet disclosed. Many parent carer forum members are likely to be neurodivergent, even if they're not aware of it, because if their kids are, it's highly likely we're going to be too. Yep. It means society at some point has to adapt and to stop making everyone fit into their square holes. Yes. It is a need to change our working practices. We should feel safe. I'm just going to scroll down a minute. Safe for people to feel like they can disclose their neurodivergence. We should. I know, working in various organizations and seeing the way that some people have been treated, I know how hard it is. All right. We want everyone to be able to contribute and participate. So we need people to feel safe, be honest and open about their ND and their needs. And many of the forum members are ND and may struggle with reading newsletters, booking onto training sessions, etc. This is absolutely the point why we're here. This is totally why we're here. So my son spent time pondering over ticking the disability box for his NHS job application, which would automatically get him an interview. More time doing that than he did in filling the form itself. Absolutely. Our younger generation, Gen Z, they are struggling over this. I coach people, my team coaches people in how to apply for jobs and what to think about there. And masking is really, really detrimental to you. If you're going to go into the workplace and you're going to have to mask and be somebody else in that workplace in order to keep your job, you're probably going to break your mental health. That's just a given. All right. Last two, and then I'm probably going to suggest we have a break. All right, because I have a heck of a lot more to get through in the next part. We have everyone open and honest, but we need things in place to support. Absolutely. Need different communication methods to suit different needs and to help everyone identify their needs. Yes. And at 53, I've started working for a parent carer forum, and it's the first time I've disclosed. Well done. Congratulations. And I hope it's been a safe place. I've worked in the NHS most of my adult life. Time for a change. This is why I do my job. You are literally making my heart sing, even though it's sad, knowing that you can be open and honest in this session and recognize this. This is exactly why I do what I do. Right, I am going to say, let's have a break now. All right. So time on my watch is 12:48. All right. Could we come back at 1 o'clock? All right. I'll grab my slide in a mo, and we'll come back at 1 o'clock. I'm going to stop sharing. Go away. Go now. Turn your cameras off. Turn your sound off. Come back to me at 1 o'clock, and I will start again at 1 o'clock. Right, I'm going to come back. I'm going to put the screen on. So let's get back to sharing my screen. I've got my sound shared. We're going to have some videos in a moment because we're going to bring in conversations from other people and viewpoints from Bath and North East Somerset and Epic Luton. So I'm going to move things on now, and we're going to talk about strengths and barriers and taking a strengths-based approach to neurodivergence and neurodiversity within our forums, and also recognizing trauma. I'm not going to dwell too long on trauma in particular, and I don't think I even have a specific slide, but I always want to make an acknowledgement that there are a few things that will impact our worlds and our experiences of the world. One of them being intersectionality. So who we are based on our different characteristics and our life and our experience and our culture and our families and everything, right? And intersectionality is going to have a massive impact on how we operate and what happens in the world, and also how others treat us. The other aspect is trauma. And being a neurodivergent person, growing up in a world that wasn't fit and didn't quite fit for you, not just you don't fit it, but it doesn't fit you, the world, can cause a heck of a lot of trauma. So we can get to our older years, we can get to our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and realize that actually everything we experience may have been down to the fact that we are neurodivergent. This is another session entirely. Again, I can do another session for about 2 hours just talking about this specifically. But I really want to make sure that you can acknowledge that being neurodivergent and being neurodivergent, a parent of neurodivergent children, we will have experienced trauma. I've been through my children being suicidal, having to apply for an EHCP, having to go through tribunals, having to go through mediation, having to change my children's school, having to educate at home. Do you think that's okay? There's trauma. Yep. There are things that we've experienced. There are things that my children have experienced that they haven't yet had time to process, even though they're in their late teens now. So on that note, let's take a flip and look at the strengths, okay? Strengths-based approach. There are an absolute pile. Yeah, no, Elaine, it wasn't a relaxing break for me. I was just thinking, no, it's too long. Sorry. Distracted, coming back, all right? There is a whole long list of strengths that I could talk about individuals, because each of us has strengths. Finding those strengths, recognizing those strengths, and being able to articulate those strengths can be incredibly difficult. Again, I was having that conversation with one of my team this morning who was mentoring a young person, and they were saying, I'm going to do a strengths-based piece of work with them this morning. I'm going to do a strengths-based exercise. I said, hey, hang on a minute. The person you're working with probably can't even articulate what their strengths are. So you're going to probably have 3 or 4 weeks of work here just to get to the point where they can say, what are my strengths? And so we took it back and stripped it back. And I said, well, just talk about what are strengths. What do you see in other people that are strengths? And sometimes we have to take other people as our measure of what a strength is. But strengths for neurodivergent people can include enhanced problem solving skills, creativity and innovation, hyper focus. Hands up, who's a hyper focus person? Give me an employment tribunal. Give me a case study and case law on employment tribunals. I'm hyper focused, baby. I'm right in there. Yeah. I wish I could hyper focus about things that are more interesting. Had a crochet phase for a while, but that's now packed up in a box. Just saying, packed up in 3 boxes actually. I'm sure that there's a few of you will align with that. Resilience and adaptability. So being able to be resilient, even though you're probably being told that you're not resilient, you probably are a damn sight more than people realize. Empathy and advocacy for accessibility. Why so many of us come to work in parent carer forums? Why so many of us do purpose-led social value work? Because we have empathy and we want to advocate for change and difference. And we feel so strongly of it. Why only 3 boxes of crochet? It was only a month. Just saying. Unwavering support and loyalty. Yep. So that ability to throw yourself in, justice sensitivity, absolutely. Those strengths are amazing, but some people will sometimes see those as a negative. Yeah, they will see the justice sensitivity as a negative, as something that actually, oh, we've got to answer this question again. But sometimes we need to understand where people are coming from in order to be able to work with them with stuff like that. So I think I have a little video coming up. Yes, we do. I'll just check the chat. So hard when the world is constantly telling you and your children they're wrong, and to shut out They are wrong to shut that out and see the strengths. It is incredibly hard. Remember, I talked about trauma. That's part of it. All right. That's part of it. When you have been told in your primary school and secondary school 20,000 times that you are wrong, that you're an idiot, that you're stupid, that you can't do this. And you're telling yourself that as well. You have a running commentary about that. It takes a lot of work to be able to overcome that, a lot of work. And that's where we have problems around mental health, well-being, supporting neurodivergent people in the workplace. We have to come from that aspect of, we recognize that there has been trauma and there continues to be. But going back to the strengths, Rachel, thank you, Rachel, from Bath and North East Somerset Parent Carer Forum, Baines, talk to me about strengths within their forum. Hopefully you're going to be able to hear this. I've turned my volume up as high as I can, all right?
So I think as a forum, we're all really open about our own strengths and weaknesses. Weaknesses is a rubbish word, but I think because we try and model that, it means it's okay for other people as well. I work in complete chaos. My filing system is non-existent. My brain works really.
Tanya's nodding.
I don't know, Tanya's nodding. So I've got strengths there. I am hopeless when it comes to anything visual or anything organized, but I'm really open about that.
A really good statement and snippet from Rachel. And I've got another one coming up. Bear with. Tanya and Rachel then were talking about playing to their strengths. So I'm just going to play this one.
We've got things going for us and we end up having a great team because we're all good at some point in the charity, aren't we? Like there's always something that one of us is great at.
Yes. And it's that playing to people's strengths. There's stuff that all of us have to do that we really hate. So for me, it's writing up notes and things like that. But actually, by trying to get a balance and supporting each other with the things we find difficult, even if it's things like going, do you want a cup of tea? Actually, as parent carers, how often do we get cups of tea made for us?
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes things like that of going, look, all right, you obviously are procrastinating. The overwhelm is obviously really bad.
There's something going on.
Start it.
Yeah.
You know, and one of our team, Helen, is brilliant for that as well, of going, right, actually, let's sit down. I'll help you chunk it.
I love that. Yeah. Chunking up, accountability, body doubles. All of those things are really, really helpful, aren't they? Does anybody resonate with those? Talking about those strengths, about recognizing as a team, actually, we can support each other and we can do things to help each other. Oh, bear with. I'll come on to the challenges in a moment. Drop in the chat if any of that resonates with you. And at some point shortly, we will end up trying to get the chat open. There it is. Brilliant. The sound is great. I'll go with that. We're going to have a breakout where you can talk about this kind of stuff in a moment, but we'll do the strengths and challenges first before we get there. Shenda, our team is very similar. I think there are quite a lot of teams like this. I loved the fact that they talked about making a cup of tea. And actually, I can see you procrastinating. Do you want some help getting started with that? These are some of the challenges. These are some of the things that can make a team work really well together. But that first bit about being open about your strengths. Yeah. Our team complement each other with strengths and weaknesses quite well. Yes. Right. Challenges. Okay. It would be remiss of me to say, hey, everything's rosy, because there's a reason why autistic people in particular struggle with employment, and we only have a 30% employment rate for autistic people. There's a reason why people with ADHD struggle with their mental health, and most of the time, if they come to work with me and come to my company, they're there because it's the last chance to get some support in place, and that's usually because of those challenges. So I've got a page of what I would call challenges around anxiety, communication. These are differences. If you're diagnosed autistic, for instance, you are likely to have had a high score on differences in communication, sensory processing, information processing, executive function. Same with ADHD. You're going to find that you're going to struggle in some of those areas. And if you've got that tick in the box from your diagnosis, you're going to struggle in these areas. That said, how do these show up? All right. These show up in things like looking after your mental health, conflict in relationships, in teams, working with stakeholders. Differences in communication can mean we have conflict sometimes, and that can cause incredible stress in your forums. That can cause stress with your stakeholders and the partners that you're working with. That can cause conflict on a WhatsApp group that your members are on. Avoiding tasks, so not getting started, saying that you're going to do something and 3 weeks later it still hasn't been done. Avoiding environments, so not going to the coffee session, not being able to turn up to an event, finding it difficult to go to a strategic parent rep meeting with the local authority in a building. You might avoid those environments. Then there are other things which are more human, I'd say. But I say human. No, it's more about well-being, about looking after yourself, asking for help when you need it. Looking after yourself physically. So getting enough sleep, getting enough food and in the right way. Being able to wash and clean yourself. And there are times when a neurodivergent person really struggles to do that kind of stuff because their executive function, their brain power is limited to just getting through the day, washing, eating, sleeping, out the window, brushing your teeth, out the window. And that can cause trouble. That can cause issues because if you're trying to work, but you're showing up and you're disheveled, people are starting to think, what's going on? We've also got things like managing boundaries at work. Boundaries in terms of relationships and communication boundaries, but also boundaries in what are you volunteering for that you shouldn't be? What work have you set yourself up for and taking too much on? An ADHD, right? If I have ADHD, I am the world's worst at going, I'll do that. I'll do that. Can I do that? I'll volunteer for that. Next thing you know, I've got 16 projects on the go and I'm crying myself at 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon because I really don't want to do the meeting that's coming up. Managing boundaries isn't just about those physical boundaries, relationship boundaries. It's also about your own boundaries, about how you take work on. And then the last one, we talk about capability concerns. And I see a lot of employers, leaders, managers, supervisors who talk about capability, but are not taking into account disability and are not recognizing that actually that capability, it may not be the challenge here, may not be the issue. It's about somebody's unmet needs as a disabled member of the team. Yes, Helen, rejection sensitivity, an absolute challenge. I can, hopefully, I've got a whole load of free resources that we'll send to you and we'll share on our website. On it, there will be a link to a video all about RSD or rejection sensitivity. Bear with me, I'm taking a drink. Here we go. Let's just see what else I've said. I feel seen. Thank you. I commit to things when I'm okay, then feel overwhelmed when I'm not. Yes. Getting started is a real challenge. Oversharing, not always appropriate in the workplace. I overshare. I say things that are completely inappropriate. My brain has got stuff going on up in here, and sometimes it just comes out, and I don't check myself. And in certain situations, that's just not appropriate. It can also be things like oversharing about your personal stuff when actually we're working as forum members or strategic reps, and we don't need to be sharing about that personal stuff. We need to be talking about what our community needs and what our members need. Yeah, there we go. You're an oversharer, Helen. Just saying. Well, your youngest says that. So meet Raja. Raja's from Epic Luton, Parent Carer Forum. Neurodiversity is my strength. So let's have a listen to Raja and what he says about neurodivergence.
So growing up, I first started thinking I was very weird or that I wasn't smart enough. But in fact, like, that is, you go through that moment, especially when you haven't got the validation, when you haven't got the support. But with the right support in place, I honestly feel so much more confident. It's not about being smart or not. It's just the way that we understand things, and there might be a different way than neurotypical people understand stuff. But there's people that are neurodiverse can still understand the same piece of information. It might just need to be done differently. So obviously, growing up, I always doubted myself, but I wish I didn't, because it had a huge impact on my mental health. I always thought I was different and that being different was a bad thing. But actually, it's been my strength in my organization, and it's been a strength for my role, because I've really, yeah, it's basically just been like, as I said, like, it's been like a superpower for me, honestly.
I want to say an apology because I didn't give you a trigger warning before that one. And Sarah, I told you a little lie at the beginning. That probably was the one where you might need the tissues. Raja's explanation about talking about his neurodivergence and where he sees it as a strength, but also as that young person growing up, he experienced all that going through his childhood. Yeah, I'd be interested to see comments that
So
you might put in there. Just some of the barriers as well. So Raja, again, the reason I've done these interviews in this way, by the way, is that sometimes people aren't always confident at being on camera or saying the right thing in a webinar. So I've done an interview with Raja and also Rachel, Tonya, and Roxy. Those links are on the website I'm going to give you at the end of this session. All right, so you can listen to them on that website or on YouTube, because they're all on YouTube at the moment. Let's just pick up the chat. Jenny, I'm going to take that. So I absolutely don't see neurodiversity as or neurodivergence as my superpower. I'm with you on that. It's a hard narrative. And again, it's language and it's very personal, because some people will say that it is. And particularly when you're talking to young children, you might want to give them that boost. And it's a language that they can understand. But I also say, actually, if you're living with it, it can be incredibly debilitating and profoundly disabling. We'll talk about disabling and language around disability in the next session, or the next section. All right. So Raja, again, is talking about social communication barriers.
Till this very day, I still really struggle. Small talk is very difficult for me. So even at yesterday's meeting, I met people for the first time, and I'm trying to make this conversation, but then I'm having a long pause and processing the information, and then speaking again. And sometimes it could come across as me being rude. But to be honest with you, I just want to speak to everyone, but I just don't know how to start that conversation, or how to speak to others. So it really helps when people actually reach out to me and say hello to me, and then have that small conversation. Because then the only thing I really need to do is respond.
So I'm just going to pick up from Emma. There's some massive pluses with your ADHD, gold standard, but equally some massive minuses too. And it's good to be more aware and understand them more since being diagnosed. I think it's life-changing. So Raja, I've worked with Raja for a while actually now, over at their forum, and he will be open and honest, and you can hear it in the rest of the interview. He has recently had an autism diagnosis, and the validation and the awareness and the calmness that's given him is incredible. So if you have people working in your forums, or members, parent carers, and they are looking at, should I get a diagnosis? Should I go down this route? It's a very personal thing, but in his case, actually life-changing in terms of that validation and that ability to be able to start to understand himself and see things in a different light, and know that you're validated, know that it isn't just about you being weird and wrong, which is what he said at the beginning of there. So thank you so much. Oh, bear with. Thank you so much to allowing me to interview, to talk to the teams and individuals there, because I think that's a really personal approach, but it's a way of being able to share that knowledge and that information in this session without putting people on the spot. So we're coming to a bit of another section and thinking about something called the social model of disability. I'm just going to check the chat just before going about this one. My voice is going. I'm going to get another drink. Bear with me. So I am hoping that quite a few of you on here will have heard of the social model of disability. I use this quite often. Now, there are different models of disability, different models and lenses of looking at neurodivergence. The medical model is basically you've got a problem, we need to fix you. The social model of disability says society creates the barriers and we need to look at that. And we need to change those barriers, remove those barriers that benefit everyone, not just neurodivergent and disabled people. And we can look at different areas, including our environment, our attitudes, and our organization. Now, I'm going to check the next slide because, yeah, I'll come back to that in a minute. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to go out to a breakout session for 5 minutes. So get ready, Helen. We're going to get ready, all right? But I'll put the slide up, and when the slide comes up, we'll go out and do it. I want you to think about within your forums, but maybe also with the stakeholders that you work with and the members that you have and the parent carers that you support, what barriers can you see if we think about our environments, our attitudes, and our organizations? Now, before we go there, I've got a few examples for you, all right? So this one comes from Rachel. What barriers do you see for neurodivergent staff and members?
Not getting preparation in advance of a meeting, not having an agenda, not having documentation in time to read it and process it.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Being expected to sit on an online meeting for 2 hours without there being any breaks.
We've had a break. I did make sure we had a break.
What barrier?
There with. And this one comes from Raja, acronyms and jargon.
So one of the things that I struggled from the very get-go was acronyms and jargon. There's an awful lot of that. And at first I used to really struggle to actually, like, I felt like I'm a bit stupid, or I'm a bit like, I'm not smart enough when everyone was talking in acronyms, and I was like, what is that? And one of the first ones they came up with was SLA. And I honestly Googled it up and everything. I didn't know what
it could be anything, couldn't it?
Yeah, I didn't know what it was, and I found out it's a service level agreement. And since that, I've never forgot it. So it's one of those things where if I know about the acronym, then I can sort of work around it, and people can then say it as much as they want. But when you don't know, it makes life really, really difficult. And what I've also realized is, whilst I was in a meeting and someone mentions that word, and then they're having a long conversation after it, my mind is still stuck in what is that acronym.
I'll just check the next one.
So,
yep, one last one from Roxy and Rachel. So this is talking about barriers at a carers cafe. How do you see neurodiversity showing up when you're running the cafes or meeting parents? What kinds of things do you see in those environments?
I can definitely see that a lot of us parents with neurodivergent children are neurodivergent ourselves. Sometimes parents don't realise that they are, and I can recognise some of my own qualities in these other parents. And yeah, I just think that quite a lot of the time they come into the cafes and they're struggling with things their children might be doing, and they feel like they're the only ones. And I think it's so useful that they come in and that we all share our knowledge and how we're experiencing things ourselves. And they quite often go, oh my goodness, I thought I was the only one. And
people can be really scared to come to cafes. We try and make sure that there's pictures of the cafe hosts on Facebook and on the website, so people know who they're looking for. And one of the things that we are trying to do is build really good relationships with other organisations. So some of them, for example, the Southside Family Project, who are a charity in Bath, they'll bring people along to their cafe so that people don't have to walk in on their own.
Really good strategies and tips there, but also thinking about barriers for different people. So we're going to have 5 minutes. So Helen, can you help me out? We're going to have 5 minutes in a breakout session. So you might want to put your cameras on for breakout. I want you to think about, what barriers do you see for neurodivergent staff and members? What barriers do you see in in forums and around based on the social model of disability, that environment, attitudes, and organization. What do you see? Go to your breakout areas once we get them started. When we come back, we won't have time. We won't have time for everybody to feedback, because I know I'm going to get onto some other stuff. But we'll feel free to put stuff in the chat. Feel free to make some notes. I'm not going to pick on people. I'm not expecting stuff to come all back and us all share. We won't have that time. But just have that conversation. What barriers do you see? And we're coming back. I want to sing to you all. You don't have to have your cameras on. You can if you want, but you can turn them off if you want. We're back in the room. All right. I feel like a magician back in the room. And I also, what's the other song I want to sing? Oh, I think it's Pink. That's in my head. I'm coming out, so you better get this party started. Sorry, because those of you that have just popped in have got me singing. You can turn your cameras off. You don't need to have your cameras on because I'm going to turn you off. Put yourself on mute so you haven't got that feedback and stuff like that going on. Well, how did that go? If anybody wants to share in the chat, you are more than welcome to share any barriers, any interesting tidbits that came out of that breakout session. I do it this way for time because I literally know if we all start talking, we'll never get anywhere. And I know 5 minutes wasn't a long time for a breakout, but I wanted to give you that opportunity of not listening to me for a bit and actually having a chat with each other. Anybody popping anything in the chat, please do. I'll let that happen. I do want to say thank you to Helen saying, I'm loving listening to Roxy and Rachel. We do the same things to support members too. Again, Helen, we talked about accessibility of venue, sensory challenges. Yes. Acoustics. All right. Location, childcare, and more. Forms. Oh my God. The amount of ADHDers in particular, and dyslexic people who will avoid a form. All right. And they'll come up with not a reason to tell you. They won't tell. They'll just not do it. It'll be late. I'll get round to it. And it's just recognizing that, do you have an alternative way of this happening? An application form for a job, for instance, could you have a video application instead of a form that needs to be filled in? Feedback after meetings and expense claims. Dyscalculic, dyslexic, expense claims. Does somebody need a bit of one-to-one support? Does somebody need a really easy way of helping them to put their expense claims in? Because the more we make it difficult, they ain't putting that claim in, right? And then 6 months later, you're going, but I need to do the accounts and you haven't put your claim in. Oh, my word. Barriers in. Let's go for it. Oh, bless you, Anita. Sorry, there was no facilitator. But thank you. I appreciate that, and I will make sure that I let people know that next time we do that. Okay, it's the first time I've done that in that way. But suitable venues for meetings, yes. Our administrator does Teams expenses that do not recognise their own strengths. Yes. Barrier with talking on the phone. Oh my God, yes. Now that is a generational thing also, but also some people really don't do well with talking on the phone and audio processing. So there's tons of barriers that came out of that conversation. Not having the minutes from previous meetings, and minutes for the next meetings too. For our forum, we offer form filling days. Love it. Book a venue, bring the refreshments, provide a safe place, and support with guides to fill them out. That's amazing. I love that as a tip. Short notice meetings. Yeah, can you just jump on a call? No. What else have we got? No British Sign Language interpreter for meetings. Yeah, if needed. Love the idea of making sure people know what's involved on training and meetings beforehand and being aware of others making assumptions and using acronyms and jargon that not everyone knows about. Papers ahead of meetings. That's coming through loud and clear. What we'll do, we're going to save the chat and I will use that and I'll do a bit of AI magic, take everybody's names out and we'll have a table of barriers that people have suggested. Absolutely, the papers ahead of meetings, even SharePoint access, but if you're not allowed to print them off, what if you need to print them and you can't just read them off of a screen? Yes. Right, I'm going to share my screen again. Thank you, thank you. That was a fabulous feedback on that one. Oh, right, we have about 20 minutes left, all right? I always do a disservice to this part because this next part, if I remember rightly, is not this bit. This is just something you can use if you want to. The next bit is we're going to talk about now the Equality Act. So we're going to talk about the law, all right? But I'm just going to go back a couple of slides. If you want to do an audit by yourself of your organization and anywhere else you might work, at Inclusive Change, we have a neurodiversity audit. It's 2 minutes, 11 questions. It's based on an organization, not individual. Have a look, all right? Just go, if you want to just go to inclusivechange.co.uk, you will find it. We take you through the steps, all right? Don't feel you have to do that now. That is not a now thing. That's a later thing. But I put it up there just in case people are interested in thinking about that. Right then, I've got to get my serious head on now because we're going to talk about the law. I mentioned earlier, I quite often read employment appeal tribunals for case law for fun. I just find them interesting. I'm like, oh, let's dig into that. But I'm not a lawyer. I have had legal training. I worked as an investigator in Customs and Excise in the National Crime Agency and spent a lot of time in law, in courts, building cases and preparing cases. So I have an understanding of the law, but I'm not a legal expert, okay? However, we cannot talk about this topic without talking about the Equality Act 2010. This is your friend. It is your friend. It is your protector. It is the thing that is the law that sets down definitions and guidance around things. It is also flipping hard to navigate, and it is hard because there is vague interpretations of the law. It is not clear and it is not perfect. However, I'm going to take you through a few important sections. 1. Section 6 of the Equality Act defines disability. The definition, I've tried to break it up on this page, and I've tried to highlight the parts of this sentence that I feel are important and need emphasis. So a disability is defined as a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial and long-term adverse effect on a person's ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. There's a lot to take in. I'm going to ask one question, and I'd love to see some answers. Yes or no? Does this define disability by having a diagnosis? Do you have to have a diagnosis in order to meet the criteria of disability and therefore be protected by Section 6 of the Equality Act? Let me know what you think about that. And those of you that have more legal knowledge than I do, it should be about need. Nope, it's need-based. No, no, no. Love it. I feel like I'm in the Vicar of Dibley. No, 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 no. No, no, no. No diagnosis mentioned. However, that said, a recent employment appeal tribunal that I've read actually said that there was a need at that in that case that a diagnosis was required, and that self-identification and self-diagnosis was not a high enough bar to demonstrate disability. I can't go into the detail of that right here and now, but if we follow up afterwards, If anybody wants to follow up with me afterwards, I will send you the link to the case. All right. But basically they said a lay person, a tribunal that isn't medically trained couldn't say that this person satisfied the criteria of disability because they hadn't had a diagnosis, and that their evidence that they provided was vague and not substantial to demonstrate disability. All right. However, generally, a diagnosis is not required. You have to demonstrate that you meet that criteria and that you're not, yeah, I'll stop there because otherwise I'll be here for another 20 minutes just on that subject. Section 20 of the Equality Act talks about reasonable adjustments. Employers have a duty to make reasonable adjustments to make sure disabled people are not substantially disadvantaged. See that word again, substantially, compared with those who are not disabled. This duty applies to both workers and job applicants. In addition to this, local authorities and government bodies have a public sector duty requirement, okay? Section 149 of the Equality Act, local authorities have a public sector duty to ensure that barriers are removed to stop discrimination and improve accessibility. That's my layperson's terms, okay? So if we have these duties to make reasonable adjustments, my next question, and you can say yes or no, is there a definition of reasonable adjustments? What is the definition of reasonable adjustments? Just wait and see what you say. My voice is really going today. Yep, another reason that underlines the importance of diagnosis. It does. However, because our waiting lists are so long, once we realise that somebody has a need and may be disabled because of a difference, as an employer, we have a responsibility and a duty to start looking at reasonable adjustments and put things in place to support them before a diagnosis, right? Don't think there's a definition of reasonable adjustment. Nope, there isn't. All right. So to save your thoughts and move on with time, there is no single definition of what is reasonable. What is reasonable depends on a number of factors and the context of a case. So we have the effectiveness of that adjustment at removing any disadvantage, health and safety. Health and safety trumps the Equality Act. If we're going to put people in danger through health and safety, we're trumping the Equality Act. All right, it's not going to be reasonable. But health and safety, we can debate that. And people who make decisions about reasonable adjustments need to think about what value do we have it doing something for one person if it impacts everybody. And even if it impacts them, doing that one thing might impact them adversely. The practicability, the cost, affordability, any potential disruption, size and resources of an employer. So there's a whole load of things that in there talk about reasonable adjustments. I have a webinar, short introductory webinar on the 11th of November, all about reasonable adjustments. You will get a link to it, all right? So you will see that and you'll be able to take that in more detail. I can't spend too much time in this session talking about and going through reasonable adjustments because I know we'll overrun and I don't want to do that, and I want Q&A in a minute. So I have some tips and reasonable adjustments. First one from Raja.
I think one of the things is sharing agendas and expectations in advance. So it's sometimes people just share agendas and they don't let you know what they're expecting from you as a person or you as an organization. But if there was any sort of information in regards to that, so this is what we're expecting from you, or can you bring this sort of information or feedback to us, it really helps because then I know what's expected of me. I don't want to go in there and get blindsided. Basically, it makes it really difficult for me.
So setting expectations and telling people,
I think
telling people what's expected could be a reasonable adjustment. That hardly costs anything. That's just a little bit of time to lay it out and say, actually, Raja, in this meeting, I need you to do this and this. Perfect. In a parent carer cafe, I need you to do this and this. This is your job. This is what your responsibility is. Brilliant. Next one, using clear language.
I would really suggest that people do this, or organizations do this, is use very clear, simple, friendly words, because a lot of the time there's very big, complex words that, you know, are said in the meetings, and you can't expect people to know these words. And it's a bit similar to the acronyms. I then get distracted and think, okay, what does that mean? And then I have to go and quickly Google it up. And that is, you know, it takes a huge lot of my time, and people can just help by just keeping it short and simple and friendly.
Another really good tip. I'd really love it if anybody's got any other tips that you want to share in the chat. We can include them. Next one here, and I'm sorry that I'm rattling through these, but I'm really, really mindful of time. Right? It's probably because I had a 12-minute break. Roxy is talking about good communication with parent carers. Oh, bear with.
I've always been good at communication, and that's one skill I've always had, part of my neurodivergence, actually. I don't know, I just really like people and trying to figure out the problems. So I always signpost. I'm quite good at retaining information. So Sendias is always my top one. A brilliant service for support. And, you know, just being a listening ear and letting them talk is really important. And then sharing similar problems that they might be having, so that they know they're not alone and that other people are going through the same thing, because quite often they're isolated, don't really have people to talk to.
Again, some tips, that communication, signposting, and we think these are the basics. Like, we're like, Roxy, I think she just does that naturally. I think that is part of what she does, and probably runs, and well, actually does run an amazing cafe, parent carer cafe, as a result. So if you have any tips, share them in the chat. Just pop them in there. As we go through to the last few minutes of this webinar, I'll pick them up and I'll read them. But I know I have a couple more slides to go, not very much. And I know I want to get to a point if there's any questions. What next? Yeah. There we go. Share in the chat anything that you you think is good practice, or that you'd love to see, or that you do yourself, because this whole session, that chat has been so powerful about sharing knowledge and empathizing and hearing and saying, yeah, that's me too. But it would be really great if we can take that chat, we can save it, and then we can build a transcript out of it and actually come up with some co-produced, and this is co-production, tips and strategies that you work with, as well as being able to just listen to me. And my last point now, and this is on the Slido, okay? Any Q&A, all right? So if you've got anything you want to ask now, you can pop it in the chat, or go back to the Slido and put it in Q&A. I have 9 minutes left. I don't believe I've done this. I kind of whizzed through a bit thinking, oh my goodness, it's going to take forever. So I am sorry about that. And I don't always want to take the legal stuff don't want to make that too heavy, because it can become really heavy. So, oh, brilliant. Sally, I asked for a name badge rather than an ID card on a lanyard, as I hate the feel of a lanyard on the back of your neck. Lovely. Like that. It means I can concentrate better on what I'm doing. Makes sense. There are people I know that don't like stickers. So if you go around and you're like, put a sticker on, no, don't want to. But having that flexibility, no problem if anybody needs to go, absolutely no problem at all. Having that flexibility is really helpful. And sometimes it can be about putting stuff on your website that just acknowledges if you need adjustments, or if you need something that will support you, help us. In again, you'll get a link, and there'll be loads of other resources that you can get from Inclusive Change. One of the things we do in our staff is we have a one-page profile for everybody. It's not medical. It's about your name, your pronouns, what you're good at, what would help you thrive in work, and what your interests are. And one of the things that we found with that was that we found commonality between people. And I've used this with other forums as well now. I've used it with other forums, and you can actually find that you've got a shared interest. So 7 people like board games, or you've actually been brought up in the same area, or that you've been to the same countries, or you come from the same countries. Amazing. Some examples here are: set expectation that moving, stimming, taking breaks is fine and welcome. Totally. Yes. Susan, when doing things where writing's involved, offers to someone to scribe, so people who struggle to write can input too. Absolutely. Would rather put my hand up to add comments rather than write things like on Menti. But thank you for doing this on the chat. Thank you so much. Other than write things on Menti, and focus groups could have a scribe on each table to write the post-it notes. Yes, like that. As I end up losing so much information as thinking about the spelling. Totally. So you can focus on getting the words out, record it in different ways. Oh, feedback. Thank you, Helen. Do you want to chuck it up now, Helen? Pop that feedback survey up. We have a feedback survey. I did have it on a slide, but I'm losing myself. We have a feedback survey. Sorry, it's online, but it's very easy to do. All right, I'm going to close mine. I hope that doesn't close it for everybody. I don't think it will. We will also offer to go outside and meet people new to groups, as we know it's nerve-wracking to come alone. Yes, yes, all of those. Loving all of those. I'm going to capture those. I'm going to take the feedback down for me because I don't want to see it happening live on screen. Q&A to check I haven't missed anything obvious in supporting my team. That's a hard one, because actually your support is about the individuals that work with you. It might be that you want to go back and have a conversation about this session, play them this session, give them an opportunity to watch this session, and then have a conversation about it, and say, well, what could we do? One of the things I would probably suggest is to look at that neurodiversity audit on culture and environment on my website. And again, after this session, I'm going to give you, in fact, I might put it in the link in a moment. I'm going to give you a link to a page. Helen, have you got the link? Can you pop it in the chat? A link to a page which has a PDF, a video of the slides, all of the interviews.
You have that, yeah. I'll just find it for you.
Yeah, no problems. It's got a video of the slides, all of the interviews from the snippets that I've played you, full interviews, and a load of other resources that you can tap into. There's a lot of information on that page, because I know I can't get it all in 2 hours. I know I can. Yeah. We're almost done, I think. We've got 4 minutes. The chat seems to be going. People have done the survey. I'm going to go on to another slide. My last question to you. What have been your key takeaways today? Is there anything you want to share in the chat about what you will take away from today? Doesn't have to be about what you've learned. It doesn't have to be something new, but what will you take away from today? That would be great to see in the chat. Absolutely brilliant if you can. And because we have a few minutes, if anybody does want to come on camera and speak, please do. Just pop your hand up and we'll unmute and do what we need to do. Other than
Lucy,
that, yes.
apologies for interrupting. Just to say, I have got the link. but it's disappeared from the MS team session that we had yesterday.
Oh, cool.
Sorry,
Okay.
from the Zoom session we had
I'll
yesterday.
find it.
But I
I'll
can
find it.
circulate it to everybody alongside the recording.
Yeah, no problems. I'll see if I can find it in a sec because I know I've got it on notes. So my computer and my phone might let me do that. So bear with. Let's go tech, shall we? Then if I copy on here, let's see if I can paste it on here. Oh my God, the power of technology is all I can say. I copied that on my phone and I've just put it into the chat. That's made me pleased today. Thanks, Emma. Laura, Helen, right, so some tips. We also have child-friendly, family-friendly sessions to include our home ed community. Yes. How many other care forums are full of neurodivergent staff like ours? Yep. Thinking about giving people information we give to people before meetings and sessions so they can know what things are involved and can prepare. Same with venues. Yep. I loved, I think one of Rachel's tips was about photographs of the cafe hosts and things like that. Emma, no props. There's your link. Thank you. For our big events, we do pictures, considering a video walk. Yes, that is a really good one. A video walk for the next one. When I've had time, I do that kind of stuff. I'll do a video walk. I'll put that in place and things like that. At this point, I think I'll go on to my last. We've done. See, that was the survey. Oh, look, I put it at the end. Oh, I hadn't even realised I'd done that. It's a slightly different link on that one. But if you want to follow up and you want any more resources, go to that page. You can use the QR code or you can use the link and we will send it to you as well. On that note, I'm going to stop talking. Sarah and Helen, is there anything that you want to say to wrap up? Otherwise, I want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to Bath and Baines for chatting to me. Thank you to Raja and Epic for talking to me. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for asking me here. And let me stop.
Just want to say a huge thank you, Lucy,
You're
for the
welcome.
session today. It's been really engaging and interesting throughout. So huge thanks to you for the work you've put into this. Really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining us.